Okay, good morning, everyone. We will get started. So to actually start this morning's event, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Western Australia. I'm here on Whadjuk Noongar land this morning, but I know that we've got people joining us from various lands across the metro and regional Western Australia. So we pay our respects to the traditional custodians, their cultures, and to elders both past and present. And we acknowledge that culture and connection to land and community is a right for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people, and that all young people have a right to cultural safety. So welcome everyone to this morning's launch of the revised Code of Ethics for Youth Workers in WA. I'm Sally Savage and I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm the current chairperson of Youth Work WA. So the revision of the code has been a really long time in the making, and it's the product of the work of many individuals and groups across the sector. So we're super excited to be here with you today as we share a bit of the journey of the review process and the final version of the revised code. So before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we've got a couple of special guests here with us today. We've got Sal Cleveray, who's the chairperson of the Youth Affairs Council of WA, and we've got Pia, who's from the youth team at the Department of Communities. We've got lots of members of our Code of Ethics revision reference group. We won't go through them all, but you know who you are. We've also got Nina Allyat from Toolshard, who was one of our consultants who assisted as a part of the project. And we've had a couple of apologies come through as well from the Honourable Minister Hannah Beasley, MLA, Honourable Dave Kelly, MLA, the Honourable Minister Simone McGurk, and also Tom Toolshard from Toolshard Consulting. I would like to say a massive thank you and acknowledge the Department of Communities who sponsored this project and gave us the funds and the resources that made this project possible. We're really thankful for their support. Just a little bit of housekeeping as well. So this is an online event. We've disabled mics. We thought that we'd enabled cameras. Looks like they're not actually though. So sorry about that. We can't see your faces. We can just see your icons. But feel free to, if your cameras are working, feel free to pop them on. And just a reminder though that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website following the event as well. So today we're going to talk through a bit of a background info, talk about the process of the review. We're going to unpack some of the key changes, show you the resources and the final posters that we've got available, etc. And just note, I suppose, that this is more of an overview of the process of the review and sharing of the new resources and releasing those out to you. We won't sort of be doing a bit of a deep dive into the Code of Ethics and unpacking case studies and that type of thing. However, we will be doing that at the Fairground Conference. So if you haven't got your tickets to the YACWA Fairground Conference, make sure you jump in and get those. That will sort of be a time where we've got longer time with you all there in the room to really unpack the code. We'll be using the question and answer function throughout. So if you just have a look at the top where it says Q&A, you can jump on there. Feel free to ask questions throughout. We've got Robbie Rumble, who's our current treasurer. He'll sort of be monitoring those questions. And I'd just like to open it up to the whole committee and also our sector champions and our reference group members who are attending today. If you would like to add to the discussion and pop your answers from your experience as a part of the review, we really invite you to do that. We would like this to be interactive. So we will just have a look through the existing questions there and you can upvote or react if there's something that you really would like an answer to. And we'll have a little bit of time at the end where we will actually open up to the committee to be a panel to answer your questions. It's likely that we won't get to all of them. However, we'll do our best and we will actually compile a frequently asked questions after the webinar and we can get that out to all of the attendees and pop it up online as well. Cool. So just a little bit of information about our association. So Youth Work WA is the professional association for youth workers in WA. And we've been created to celebrate the incredible impact that youth workers have and establish a secure future for quality youth work practice and education. So we've got a number of roles, including creating opportunities to celebrate youth work. You might have been along to our annual Youth Work Awards, which we usually hold around November time, which is a really nice celebration of the sector. We also also develop and maintain the Code of Ethics, of course, and we set standards for youth work practice and education in WA, and we develop relevant training and resources. So our committee is actually made up of 9 members, and our current committee, we have myself as the chair, Kat Moselle as the vice chair, our secretary is Christy O'Brien, our treasurer is Robbie Rumble, and we've got general committee members Jason Addis, Matt Lantinier, Tamara Mott and Nikki Chatham and Kirsty Gibb. We've also got an ex officio member from YACWA who's Lorna Geraghty, and we've got co-opted roles, Belinda Baker in the memberships officer role and Katie Berry in the social media and comms officer role. I'd just like to note as well that we've obviously had significant involvement from previous committee members and champions of youth work over the many years, and the past few years particularly, that have contributed to this review. So a big shout out to everyone that's been on the committee and contributed in some way. So our committee are all volunteers. We work full-time in the youth work sector, and between us we've got different backgrounds, and we represent various areas of the sector, and we've worked in various forms of youth work over the years. We are actually a membership-driven organisation as well, so really encourage you to jump on the website and sign up for membership. It's currently free. You get things like cheaper Code of Ethics training, cheaper tickets to the Youth Work Awards, email newsletters, and also a certificate of membership as well. Cool, so that's enough from me, and I'm going to hand over to Christy to talk about the history of Youth Work WA.
Thank you, Sally. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the launch of the revised Code of Ethics. My name is Christy, and I'm the current Secretary for Youth Work WA and Head of Student Wellbeing at Youth Futures. I just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce you to the Youth Work WA and the Youth Work WA and the WA Youth Work Code of Ethics, 2 key pillars in supporting ethical and professional youth work practice in our state. Youth Work WA was established in 2006 in the Sundowner following a youth affairs conference hosted by YACWA. At that time, discussions on the professionalisation of youth work had been ongoing for years. Practitioners sought to strengthen their professional identity and safeguard the integrity of the field from external pressures and threats. By 2007, those efforts culminated in the incorporation of the WA Association of Youth Workers, Inc., the first professional association for youth workers in the Southern Hemisphere. In 2015, the association was relaunched as Youth Work WA. In 2018, and again in 2022, Youth Work WA conducted a review of the Constitution and made important recommendations and subsequent updates regarding its principles, laws, and established precedents. True to its roots, Youth Work WA remain a practitioner-led organisation run by dedicated volunteers committed to advancing ethical and professional youth work practice. Today, the organisation plays a key role in, as what Sally said, International Youth Work Week and the WA Youth Work Awards, developing and upholding the WA Youth Work Code of Ethics, establishing standards for youth work practice and education in WA, creating relevant training programs, and advocating for the recognition and security of youth work as a profession. The WA Youth Work Code of Ethics was initially developed by Dr. Howard Sercombe in collaboration with the youth sector and endorsed at the YACWA AGM in 2003. The code became the foundation of Youth Work WA and continues to guide our work today. In 2014, the code underwent a significant review involving over 70 youth workers and stakeholders. The outcome was the current Code of Ethics for youth workers in WA, accompanied by several key resources, including a youth-friendly version of the code, a code of ethics with commentary, supporting ethical youth work guides, and ethic cards and training materials. In 2022, our commitment to strengthening ethical practice was supported by a discretionary grant of $65,000 from the Minister for Youth, Dave Kelly. Last year in 2024, we undertook another review of the code, thanks to a grant from the Department of Communities. This continuous evolution ensures that the code remains relevant, practical, and aligned with the needs of young people and youth workers alike. Youth Work WA and the Youth Work Code of Ethics are fundamental to ensuring high standards of practice in youth work. By upholding ethical principles and advocating for professional recognition, we continue to build a stronger, more accountable youth sector. I encourage all youth workers to engage with YouthWork WA by becoming members, participating in training and using the Code of Ethics to guide their practice. Together we can secure the future of quality youth work in WA. I'll now hand you over to Lorna, who currently works at YACWA.
Sorry, Lorna, I think you're on mute.
How embarrassing, 5 years after COVID. Thank you, everybody. I thought that would organically happen, but it didn't. Thank you, Sally, for keeping me grounded. Kaya, everybody, my name is Lorna. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Programs Manager at the Youth Affairs Council of WA, or YACWA. And I'm the ex officio member for YACWA on the YouthWork WA board. I'm here to talk about the consultation and the review process that we went through that shaped the development of our new Youth Work Code of Ethics. So the first part was our consultation process. So to ensure a sector-wide and collaborative approach, the Youth Work WA board engaged external facilitators through a human-centered design specialists, with Tom and Nina from Tallchart to lead the review process. Between May and June in 2024, we ran 6 themed online workshops, each designed to explore key aspects of the existing code, identifying areas for improvement and to ensure its relevance to young people, frontline youth workers, and youth work organisations. Participants were invited to attend any or all of the workshops that aligned with their interests and expertise. And we had 6 focus areas. Number 1 was retrospective. So examining contemporary social and systemic factors involving young people. Then we had an Aboriginal voice, really wanting to ensure that this variation of the code really ensured a First Nation perspectives and a commitment towards reconciliation, and that would be embedded in our code. The third was a regional and remote voice, recognising the distinct needs of youth workers and young people in non-metro communities. 4 was relationships, addressing professional boundaries, accountability, and ethical relationship building with young people. The 5th was co-regulation and integrity, exploring trauma-informed practice and the role of co-regulation beyond individual self-care. And our last one was diversity, equity, and inclusion, embedding human rights principles and modern cultural contexts into our ethical practice. In parallel to this, we had a reference group. So we formed an independent reference group comprising of over 13 leaders from across the youth sector in both metro and rural WA. The group included representatives from non-profits, local government, tertiary education, peak bodies, regional organisations, and we also had a young person from the Youth Homelessness Advisory Committee recruited. Collectively, we brought together over 250 years of experience to the process. The reference group really played a critical role in analysing the insights gathered from the workshops and ensuring that the revised code remained a true ethical framework rather than evolving it into something like a training manual, best practice guide, or a sector handbook. So then between June and August 2024, the group continued to review multiple reiterations of the draft code, refining its language and ensuring alignment with the core principles of youth work ethics. Additional consultations were then kind of like highlighted as a need to occur. And these included consultations with an Aboriginal controlled organisation, also touching base again with Howard Sukrom, who's an esteemed academic and expert in youth work ethics that was obviously involved in the first iteration of the code. And we also engaged young people in services such as Passages and YACWA. Throughout the process, we reaffirmed that the Code of Ethics sets the minimum standards to ethical standards with youth workers. And we recognise that that is both paid and unpaid roles. It's not a how-to guide or a best practice framework, but a foundation upon which professional integrity is built. We then, in September 2024, opened for feedback and finalisation. So we distributed the first draft to the sector via an online survey and encouraged organisations to also seek feedback from the young people they work with. We received over 30 responses, with 85% of people stating that the revised Code of Ethics met their expectations. Most of the feedback were that requested changes were things around minor wording adjustments, or involving those other consultations that we did, which we have incorporated into the final version. As we move towards publication, YouthWork WA in collaboration with YACWA worked on creating visual infographics to make the code more accessible and engaging for the sector and young people. With all the final reflections, I think that we're incredibly pleased and honoured to have such high level of engagement from young people in the sector to support the work and the review of this process. We've really aimed at YouthWork WA to create a thorough and inclusive review, ensuring multiple opportunities for sector-wide input. I'd now like to pass over to Tamara, who will discuss the key findings and decisions about what's been incorporated into the new code. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorna. Hi, everyone. My name's Tamara, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a regional member of YouthWork WA based in the Pilbara, and I was also a member of the reference group that Lorna mentioned prior to joining the YouthWork WA committee. So I'm going to cover the key themes that came out of those consultations. Firstly were some really valuable Aboriginal perspectives. We heard extremely consistent feedback that the code should acknowledge and recognise First Nations culture and perspectives. Secondly, there were contemporary factors identified as well. People shared that a number of global events and changes in society has shaped how we work with young people today. For example, we've seen a move to online services due to COVID-19, a greater focus on child-safe practices as a result of mandatory reporting in some settings, and a change in the workforce with lived experience and peer work roles becoming more common, which our code could better reflect. We also heard some valuable regional perspectives, that there was a need to acknowledge the different contexts for regional youth workers as the landscape and the resources is extremely different to metro systems. And finally, we heard that youth work is now more professionalised, which is fantastic. The code is appreciated as a standard to support youth work and provides a baseline for all workers and volunteers, particularly with staff training, development and supervision. It is also useful to articulate to other organisations when we're working in collaboration what youth work is and how they can expect us to operate. This was all extremely helpful themes which came out of the consultations that helped to inform the changes that were made to the code. I'll now hand over to Kat to talk through these changes.
Thanks so much, Tamara. So my name's Catherine Moselle and I'm the current Vice Chair for YouthWork WA. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently at the Education Department as a Youth Support Coordinator. So I'll just be unpacking some of the key changes that are in the refresh code. And overall, we've reduced the principles from 14 down to 13 principles. This was done through merging a couple of principles from the previous code, as well as including a whole new principle. You'll also notice a few of the titles have been updated. And as Tamara discussed, most of the changes are about updating current language and contemporary practice and principles for effective youth work. Notable in the refresh code is also recognition that there is some shared responsibility for principles and practice between the youth worker and the organisations that they work within. So I'll now just go through each of the 13 principles and point out the changes from the 2014 Code of Ethics to the new and current refreshed 2024 Code. So firstly, the change in the code from primary client to primary consideration. This reflects that primary consideration is less formal and is more of an action. The feedback here indicated that client was considered a more deficit model and reflected the power indifference in the professional relationship. So our second brand new principle, which we are all super proud of, is the code recognises the recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. To bring the code into contemporary standards, youth workers recognise that they live and work on the traditional lands and waters of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people throughout WA. Youth workers are respectful of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, recognising that culture and connection to land is not only a right but a strength for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people. Youth workers also enable and build upon activities that encourage truth-telling, connection to culture, reconciliation and promoting cultural safety and well-being. So principle number 3 was context. The main difference here is more inclusive language, acknowledges a much broader context that we find young people in. Things such as culture and spirituality, family, age, peer groups, community, ability, society, access to resources, geographical location, sex and sexuality, gender identity, technology, and various subcultures, which is quite broad. Still included in the Refresh Code is the recognition that youth workers can facilitate change within the individual young person's context, but also the broader context that they live in and are affected by. So principle number 4, instead of the previous title, which was promotes equality, this principle has now been changed to advocates for social justice. The youth workers recognise that not all young people are the same. They have unique needs and contexts, and this requires a different approach and resources. And youth workers aim for equity in outcomes, not just equality. So youth workers are agents of change, not only for the individual young person, but more broadly for challenging systemic disadvantage. So in the previous code, self-awareness was a principle on its own, and this has now been included in this principle. It states that a youth worker self-reflects to understand their own personal values and attitudes and beliefs and how this can impact their work with young people. So principle number 5, we have empowerment. This is largely the same, however, it now includes language such as a strength-based approach and that young people are experts in their own lives. It also recognises that youth workers work alongside young people rather than do to or do for the young person. It still states that the youth worker empowers a young person by making power relations open and clear and avoiding dependency. So principle number 6, we have duty of care, which is a slight variation on the previous code again, including harm minimisation, strength-based and trauma-informed, which is some of the language you'll find throughout most of the code now. It includes in the Refresh Code more explicit language that if a youth worker is concerned for a young person's safety, they have a duty to act on this information to prevent or minimise harm. It also states where practicable, young people should be included in decision making around increasing theirs and others' safety. Also notable in this one was legally and ethically, duty of care is a shared responsibility between the youth worker and organisation. So principle number 7 now was a slight change in wording again. So it went from transparent relationship to the refreshed title of just transparency. This is due to the transparency extending beyond the professional relationship and including informing young people of information pertaining to all the stakeholders involved. This ensures that the young person has their own agency in making decisions and that nothing is withheld from them. Right. Principle number 8, confidentiality, is still the same. However, included in the Refresh Code is where it is deemed necessary to break confidentiality in order to respond to a safety concern, that significant steps should be made to involve the young person in how this will be carried out, including who will be informed, when this will occur, and what the next steps may be. So principle number 9, we have cooperation, which was in the previous code, and now we've included collaboration in this section. The feedback in this indicated that youth workers often take a more proactive approach in ensuring the young person's needs are met, and that they often collaborate across many stakeholders and with the young people themselves. So principle number 10 was has been refreshed to include development as well as knowledge. Previously it was just knowledge. This principle recognises that a youth worker will continually seek to develop themselves through not only knowledge but skill development, formal training, peer and line supervision and other informal developmental practices. So principle number 11 is boundaries. It's largely the same, however it now includes language around consistency, safety, respectful and effective environments that promote autonomy and well-being for the young person. And number 12, principle number 12 is the replacement for self-care and is now titled Youth Worker Wellbeing. This change was to reflect that the onus is not just on the youth worker, but also the organisation as a shared responsibility. Wellbeing was also thought to be a more holistic term, and that youth workers will actively participate in self-care, self-reflection and self-awareness. And lastly, our principle number 13 is integrity, and this has now been merged with preventing corruption from the previous code. This principle now states that youth workers demonstrate and promote integrity of the youth work profession, as well as act to prevent corruption. So I'll now just hand over to Dr. John Sutcliffe, ECU's Youth Work Course Coordinator and Lecturer, to discuss how to embed the code further. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. I'm John Sutcliffe from Edith Cowan University, and really I'm just going to talk a little bit about how the Code of Ethics is integrated into youth work education and the importance of having a Code of Ethics in a profession from an education standpoint. So our position on the Code of Ethics is not that ethics is an add-on or something that people kind of get at the end of a degree or at the end of a training program as they go into the profession. I think Lorna may have mentioned earlier, it's not a how-to guide. It's not, kind of a playbook that people are given that they can just take and say, well, if I just do these things, then I can be a youth worker. So that's really our position from a curriculum perspective. So we integrate the Code of Ethics into our curriculum really explicitly, and we do that from the moment that youth work students start their course through to the end. So what we find is that students have an ongoing relationship with the Code of Ethics as one framework of youth work practice. And within that, we really try and use the Code of Ethics as a practical tool where, we do things like students might analyse a situation where a young person discloses information, and they work through the Code of Ethics to look at those tensions where, yes, there is a duty of care, but there is also levels of transparency and trust building. So it's not as simple as saying I'm faced with a scenario, so I'll go to the Code of Ethics and that will tell me what to do. So it's really a guide for students to become ethical and professional practitioners. So to add the theoretical depth, because we don't just view ethics in our curriculum as purely theory, and the Code of Ethics and the work of Youth Work WA really brings that theory to life. So we also examine the theory that drives the ethical principles, because there's not one single moral theory that drives all of the Code of Ethics. There's competing ones, and students also really enjoy looking at the moral theory that may be in tension with some of the values in the Code of Ethics that you may find in different professions as well. So part of it is knowing what doesn't exist or drive a certain profession's Code of Ethics and value base, so that you can get a broader understanding. The other thing that is really important that we find in curriculum design is that it also equips students to more thoroughly examine policies and procedures when they go into organisations, because students are the future practitioners and the future leaders that need to critically contribute to review and improvement of policies and procedures down the track. So I always like to say that, a good policy shouldn't sort of stop with a youth worker saying, well, I can't do that, or I have to do this because it's our policy. That policy needs to be able to be explained as to, well, why is that policy in place to young people? And the Code of Ethics helps make sense of policy and procedures, so that they're more than just rules that people follow in organisation. The Code of Ethics also really promotes a consistent language throughout the sector, and that's really helpful for students, so we have alignment with what students are learning in their training course, and when they go into their placement and when they go into the field into paid work, that they're understanding language and using language so that it's not just buzzwords or words that they're hearing for the first time, and they have real meaning. So that really helps students integrate into the sector rather than feel like outsiders stepping in It's also really helpful for students to understand and define what youth work is, and what makes youth work distinct and different to other professions that might be really different or might sort of have overlap, things like community work, social work, perhaps teaching as well. So, and the flip side to that as well is that youth workers can then explain to other people what youth work is and what youth workers do. And that's really important and an important part of what Youth Work WA stands for. So integrating the code of ethics as well as students work through their training program and their education, placements are really crucial. So students have the opportunity to do really extensive placement where they can go and get experience, observe and engage with ethical guidance from experienced professionals in the field as well. And we really emphasise reflective practice. So students can go and get experience and then return to lectures, examine their own values, their own biases, focus on self-awareness, which is obviously really congruent with the code of ethics. So really, our view is that youth work education, it doesn't start and stop at graduation, that really it's a commitment to lifelong learning. The code of ethics are living documents, and that's why we have things like reviews. Some things stay fairly similar, other things shift and change, and I really applaud Youth Work WA for having the courage to go into some of those areas where there was some tension and discussion around different views and language and that kind of thing. So to go into that place where it's not easy to change things and shift things to keep them current, but more importantly, keep them meaningful for youth workers. So ultimately, we're dedicated to embedding the code of ethics throughout the training programs that we offer in youth work, and good youth work education should have a balance of theoretical knowledge, practical experience, and ongoing reflective practice. So we really are wanting our graduates to end up being professionals that champion the rights of young people and foster their wellbeing. So I will now hand over to Matt to continue the discussion. Thanks.
Hello everyone. It's actually Robbie. Matt couldn't be here with us today. So yeah, my name is Robbie. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the treasurer of Youth Work WA and team leader of student wellbeing services at AMK WA. Super excited to be here with you all and lucky enough to be the one to officially launch the revised code of ethics. Yeah, we're super excited to share this with you. It's great to see so many of you here and supporting this important step forward for our sector. I just quickly want to go through some of the resources that we have available. So we've got 2 versions of the posters that will be available to order and as a free download. So we'll have an organisational poster and also a youth poster. We'll also have the familiar flip cards available for purchase as well, and they will come as part of like different bundles and packs. And we've also got some more resources on the way. So we'll have a full code of ethics with commentary and scenarios. Keep an eye on our social media as well, because we'll let you guys know when they're ready to go. Our code of ethics training workshops will now include the revised code of ethics. If you or your organisation are interested in diving deeper into the code of ethics and how to apply it into your practice, please sign up using the expression of interest form. You can find the form through our website or using the links in the Q&A section. You can also pre-order resources using that same expression of interest form too. So these are our new posters. On the left is our organisational poster, and on the right is our youth poster. If you'd like to know more about the training regarding the content and what's included, please visit the website. You've got like a training page. We've actually got a new website. You can go check it out. So I think from here we'll probably wrap it up. I think unless Sally, you've got anything else to add. Thank you all for being here. I just want to thank everyone who was involved in the review process, from the sector contributors to the community members past and present, and everyone behind the scenes. Your hard work has made it possible. I'd also like to acknowledge the Department of Communities and our grant funders for their generous support. And just before we finish up, just a reminder for the membership, for the YouthWork WA membership, it's currently free. The benefits are cheaper code of ethics training, cheaper tickets to our annual awards event, email newsletters, and a membership certificate. We'll also be at the YACWA Fairground Conference. This is an event you won't want to miss, so be sure to grab your tickets. This will be our first opportunity to take a deep dive into the revised code of ethics. Yeah, hope to see you there. There is a link in the Q&A section to find out more about YACWA's Fairground Conference and how to purchase tickets. Yeah, so thank you all for being here today. If you have any questions, please reach out to us via email or on social media. And if you haven't already followed us on social media, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Cool. Thanks, everyone.